Hey guys, welcome to another video. We're doing something a little bit different today. Nothing arcade related directly, but as you see I have my trusty Sega Dreamcast here. And what we're going to do today is we are going to update it with the GDEmu. For those of you who are not familiar with this device, it's just a little replacement for the Dreamcast GD-ROM drive. This will allow us to load games off of an SD card. That way we don't have to worry about any future reliability issues with the original disk drive, which, wow, you can see is quite dirty in mine. You know, these, no matter how well you take care of these, the disk drive is a moving part and it will wear out over time. So it's nice to have the EMU to preserve the Dreamcast, because once you remove the GD-ROM, there's no other moving parts in here, and it's going to make the Dreamcast last a lot longer. So installation is supposed to be pretty simple. I'm going to kind of walk you guys through that right now, and then we'll test it out. I have a 64 gig micro SD card here, which may or may not work. This thing is apparently quite picky about which SD card you use. So we'll check it out and see if we have any issues with it, or what. We'll see how it is. So I'm going to gather up what I need here, which is basically just a screwdriver as far as I know, but I need a skinny one. And we'll get started. It shouldn't take long to install, and then we'll mess with it and see how it works out playing some games. Okay guys, I found my skinny screwdriver, and you just have to pop off this modem on the side to find one screw, and then the others are just in the corner as you would expect them. That's why you need a skinny screwdriver. So let's get this installed. I really should clean this Dreamcast up at some point. I didn't even realize how many little scuffs and stains it has on it. This is not my original Dreamcast. I left that at my parents' house a long time ago when I first moved away. Left it for my brother, and got this Dreamcast a few years later as a Christmas gift, and I've had it ever since. I've never really done much with it. Did have to fix it once because something broke on the control ports. Okay guys, here we are inside the Dreamcast. You can see again, this is the drive right here. There's the laser. Everything is quite dusty. And then I believe you just have to remove these screws right here. 1, 2 down there, and 3. I believe those 3 you remove, and then this whole unit comes out. I think that's how it works. And again, these are just regular Phillips head screws. Nothing intimidating here at all. In fact, I'm doing this with one hand. Luckily, this screwdriver is magnetic. It's making things easier. Alright, 3 screws out. Now, this whole thing should just lift out, I believe. Let me put the camera down for a second. Alright guys, here's the GD-ROM unit removed from the Dreamcast. And obviously I won't get rid of this. I'm just going to, bag it and box it, save it for the future just in case. I don't want to permanently, change my Dreamcast, I mean, I am changing it, but I don't want to get rid of the original parts, obviously. So that's out. Here's what we're left with, a nice big gaping hole. And so the GDEmu board has some standoffs on it. You can see this off-white connector here plugs in there. So this must go like that. SD card on the top. Pretty simple. Only one way it can go in, so nothing magical there. It did come with one screw, which I believe goes here. So I might have to put the camera down for a second just to do that, and then I'll be right back. Alright, now here's the board secured down with that single screw. You see there's a little standoff underneath it. And then on this side, you just get these nylon standoffs here that don't actually connect to anything. But this thing is secure between, most of it is held in by the socket itself and then that one screw. And the board itself is so small and light, it's not going anywhere. So I'm going to put my SD card in. We'll get this hooked up to the TV and see if we can't get some games running. Before we move on, just a quick couple notes about the preparation of the SD card that you'll need. The manufacturer's website has a few mistakes on it, so I just wanted to point those out. I don't know if it hasn't been updated in a while and maybe it's just old information, but nonetheless, it's on the site and it's incorrect. So first thing I should point out is that he says you can only use up to a 32 gigabyte card. That's untrue. The card I have is 64 gigs and it works just fine. Bigger cards may even work, but the games do take a little while to load. So if you have a card with a ton of games on it, it's going to take a little while. So you might want to split a large library up onto 2 cards or even more maybe. The second thing I want to mention is he recommends the software from the SD Association to format it. That's not going to work on, at least under Windows 10, at least their most recent version. That software did not allow me to format the card as FAT32, so that's not going to work with this. I had to find a different third-party program. Here's a screenshot of it. I don't necessarily recommend this one either because it took a really long time to format the card, but it did work, and here's the settings that I used. He recommends a 32 kilobyte cluster size or as large as possible. In my software, the 64 kilobytes was the largest I could use, so I used that. And this set me up with a working SD card for the GDEmu. So with that being said, let's take a quick tour of the menu system. As we look at these recordings, I just want to point out, you might notice a slight whine in the audio. That's not from the GDEmu. That's being generated by my VGA adapter. It's the one that I've had for years. Frankly, I couldn't hear that whine until I watched these videos back. And yeah, sure enough, if I adjust the audio, the game audio so that it's low, I can hear that. It's just the volume knob on the VGA box is a little funky, and if I adjust it a little bit, I can minimize the volume of that whine. I can even make it louder, I've discovered. So it's not noticeable in real life, and either way, it has nothing to do with the GDEmu. So just keep that in mind as we watch this. Okay, and starting off, you can see here's the load time I was talking about. I have a little over 20 games on the SD card right now, and that's how long it took to load. So you can kind of extrapolate that to bigger libraries. That was in real time, by the way. I didn't speed up or slow that down. So let's take a look. We have system info here. Just gives you some like various information, including the firmware of the GDEmu itself, which is nice because the manufacturer, he does put out updates once in a while that you'll want to install. And under options, we have some nice stuff. You can use this as a region-free device. You can force VGA for games that don't support it. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll work, but they will load. In-game reset, of course, will bring you back to the menu, and then you also have the option to skip the boot screen and whatnot. And for each game, you do get a little artwork here. And you see they're kind of just listed. They're not in alphabetical order or anything. They're only in the order that you put them in on the SD card. So that would take a little bit of manual work if you wanted to alphabetize them, which I think I do, so I'll probably put in the time to do that. As you see, we're loading a game here. It's loading just as you would expect from a GD-ROM. I don't see any issues with it whatsoever. I don't think it's loading faster particularly, and I don't think it's loading slower. I think it's more or less dead on. I kind of wish I had recorded some footage with the GD-ROM drive so I could really compare the load times, but I don't think there's going to be much difference between the actual hardware and the GDEmu. But as you can see, the game loads just fine, sounds fine, no graphical glitches that you wouldn't expect from the game as it would normally run, and yeah, it looks great. I should mention I'm recording this with an open source scan converter. I think it looks terrific. Now this game, the load times are really fast, but I haven't played it for a while from the actual disc, so I can't honestly remember if that would be faster than usual or just normal. The game that I've played the most recently is Crazy Taxi, and to me, the load times on that seemed just normal, which is fine. I'm not complaining about that at all.
Lightning, Hornet, Menu.
And you can see everything's in sync.
Race
Looks
start.
like it should look. Sounds
Ladies
like it
and
should sound.
gentlemen, start your engines. 3, 2, 1, go! Checkpoint.
Okay, and skipping ahead now to Crazy Taxi. As I mentioned earlier, the load times on this seem just normal to me. And again, that's fine. Maybe a faster SD card would load slightly faster. I'm not sure. I'm probably turning the game audio way down on this one because I don't want to get any copyright strikes or anything. But the music does play just fine. There was no glitches at all. You know, no silence. I've seen some other videos where people had issues with this game in particular, with the music on the GDEmu. However, I don't know if they were using an original one or a knockoff one. As far as I understand, the knockoff ones don't have the ability to update the firmware, and that could be critical for something like this. So, if at all possible, I would stick with the original. A lot of people complain that it's really hard to get. I didn't find that to be the case at all. I just subscribed to the guy's blog via email, and one day he posted when he was going to sell it, and I showed up at that time, and I bought it, and it came a few weeks later from overseas. So it was a pretty smooth process as far as I'm concerned. It only took a few weeks from when I even discovered that this existed before I had it in my hands. Alright, and here we have one of the simpler games on the Dreamcast, Chuchu Rocket. It's been a long time since I've played this one, so it was hard for me to remember how to even play it, although I love it. Probably gonna start playing this again soon, just because this was such a good time back when the Dreamcast was new. I'm surprised they haven't really put it out on many more systems. I think there might have been a Game Boy Advance version, Game Boy Color maybe, I'm not sure. And there was an Android version that I used to play, but that didn't have any of the battle modes or anything. But as you can see, it plays fine. And that's the overall story with everything. Everything plays fine. And we'll take a look at Jet Set Radio or Jet Grind Radio, depending on which region you're used to.
Somewhere in Asia, there's a city that cannot be found on any map called Tokyo.
Sounds right, looks right. Again, the load times seem fine. Nothing weird going on. So yeah, guys, that's the GDEmu. I'm very happy with it. To me, the only couple of cons with this are a couple of things that are just the nature of the Dreamcast. The first of which is that because it uses a fairly proprietary format, I don't know if it's fully proprietary, but certainly not a format that you can just rip on your own in most cases. You normally would have to rip these games by using a Dreamcast, and you need a broadband adapter and everything, so ripping the games yourself for most people is not going to be feasible, and that's something that I do like to do. It feels a little icky to be downloading the ROMs, but you know, I do own the games, and that's everyone's own call, you know, for how you feel about that. And then the other thing is just that when you do buy a new game, there's a nice feeling of popping it, you know, grabbing the disc, throwing it right in. You won't be able to do that anymore with the GDEmu. You're going to have to go online, you know, find an image of the game, put it on the SD card, and then you'll be able to play it. So you do have a little, you know, bit of an extra step to get to playing your games. But overall, I think that's a small sacrifice to make for the advantages that you do get with this device. You know, I think if you can get it for the, you know, directly from the guy that makes it and pay his normal price, I think it's well worth the money, especially if you want to preserve Dreamcast games, because like I said, this is going to make your Dreamcast a lot more reliable over the years. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I would definitely recommend sticking with the original one so you can get those firmware updates. I would definitely research which SD card you plan to use with it. Unless you just have a bunch laying around, then it's no problem just to try them out. I didn't have one laying around, so I had to do the research. I'm happy with this one, and I'll link the exact card that I used down in the description. Okay guys, that was my review of the GDEmu. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks again for watching.